It's time now for the World Brief and a review of some headlines on our newspapers. First, let me tell you what's happening around the world. Short, sweet and significant. For the first time in more than 25 years, a US president has met a Syrian counterpart. Now, before heading to Qatar, Donald Trump met Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa in Saudi Arabia. Now, Sharaa is a former militant who fought against United States forces in Iraq and actually had a $10 million bounty on his head until December of 2024. Now, Trump described al-Sharaa as a young and attractive, tough guy and said that he had a real chance, essentially, of holding this new Syria together following the toppling of Bashar al-Assad last year. Let's listen to what Trump had to say.
I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know, strong pass. Very strong pass fighter.
Does that worry you at all?
He's got a real shot at pulling it together. I spoke with President Erdogan, who I'm very friendly with him. He feels he's got a shot at doing it.
I mean, it's not too often you hear Trump speak so nicely. Okay, well, Trump also urged Sharaa to deport Palestinian terrorists, help the United States against Islamic State, and also encouraged him to deal with the country's remaining chemical weapons stock. Now, in the Qatari capital Doha, a $96 billion deal with state-owned airline Qatar Airways to buy 210 planes from the United States manufacturer Boeing was signed. The White House says agreements signed by the United States and Qatar could lead to an economic exchange worth at least $1.2 trillion. Now, this deal has been done in the shadow of a luxury plane worth $400 million in the process of being gifted to Trump by the Qatari royal family. Although there's been nothing offered in exchange for the plane, many commentators say that it would be naive to expect that the Qatari royal family would hand out such a large item with no strings attached. Now, after receiving another grand welcome from Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Trump is to land on a third and his final stop during this trip to the United Arab Emirates later today for a one-day visit. Finally, Mali's military junta has been dissolved, or rather has dissolved all political parties in the countries amid a growing crackdown on dissent since the army seized power. Now, the presidential decree was signed by military leader Assimi Goita, who seized power after coups in 2020 and 2021 and is due to stay in power for at least another 5 years, despite pledges to hold elections in 2022. Now, the move is expected to spark fresh resistance by political parties who have been demanding the country returns to democratic rule. A national conference organized by the regime but boycotted by leading opposition parties last month recommended naming General Goita as president until 2030. Now, that move sparked condemnation from opposition figures and human rights groups. The junta originally committed to holding elections, as I said, in February of 2022. Now, this presidential decree warned Malians not to ignore the dissolution of political parties, but did not outline any penalties if they do actually participate in them.
All right. Well, very quickly, one sentence on Donald Trump in Qatar and the aircraft, or is it called the Flying Palace? They do say there's no such thing as a free lunch. So, opposition to this move is very much accepted and understandable, because in diplomacy, of course, yes, the exchanges of gifts and so forth, but there's a limit within reason. And we know that a presidential aircraft is a sign of national sovereignty. So to accept that, even here when we were debating the new aircraft that the presidency bought, it would have been unheard of for the president to accept a gift from any country, whether it be friend or foe, for the purposes of that. So we can't have double standards. That applies to the United States as well. Now to Mali. I worry about our Alliance Etats du Sahel, the Sahel nations, because as much as there is this noble fight, revolutionary fight against French neocolonialism, let it not dissolve and degenerate into paranoia that creates dictatorship and totally strips all citizens of rights and identity. So Mali is said to have over 300 political parties. And Goita and his government feel that a lot of these political parties are tools of the elites who are being controlled from France. He held the political conference where he emerged as leader for the next 5 years. Many of these political parties boycotted, but remember, with over 300, so about 100 boycotted. They have their own alliance, but over 200 or so were in attendance, and some civil society organizations, and they endorsed him to be leader for the next 5 years, saying that Mali is not ready for elections currently. So now you have the 100 political party alliance protesting and some leaders going missing and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's extremely unfortunate that this is the measure that is now being taken because, again, like I said, in your paranoia or your revolutionary fight against neocolonialism, be careful not to then hinder on the fight, on the rights of your people.
Agreed. Thank you, Bimbai.
Dr. Abati, over to you.
Yeah, in Mali, I think it's very unfortunate. It's an illustration of the reversal of the democratic process in Africa. Whether you are talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, or Niger Republic, where the military will seem to have taken over. Now, Goita got to power in 2021, effectively, when he removed Junta, who succeeded Boubacar Keïta, who was president, and he was part of the coup that removed Boubacar Keïta in 2020. What was the context? The crisis in the Sahel region, the Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the protests by civilians against the administration, the killing of about 14 civilians and all that. Then the military moved in. Then later, Goita, Assimi Goita, a soldier, who had taken part in the rebellion, who became vice president to Junta, decided to take over. Now he promised that there will be a return to civilian rule in 2022. In 2022, he changed his mind again. He moved the goalpost to 2024.
Right.
Now, this year, in April 2024, there was now a national conference. At that national conference, which was boycotted by political parties in Mali, a decision was taken that he could remain president till 2030 for an additional period of about 5 years or so. Now, this is what has caused the problem, leading to protests by civilian forces, human rights groups, civil society in Mali. Now, these opposition groups, civilian opposition groups, they were planning a protest for Friday this week. But ahead of that, a presidential decree was announced yesterday, signed by Assimi Goita, saying that, look, all political parties have been banned. All political discussions are not allowed. All political associations will not be allowed in Mali. Now, penalties were not prescribed. But what we know is that human rights groups working in Mali have been reporting that politicians, leaders of the opposition, including the Secretary General of CODEM, has disappeared. Mass gunmen have been taking people out. So what you have is, the emergence of a full-blown dictatorship in Mali, and which is unfortunate for the democratic process in West Africa and also in Africa. Now, we should note that the Malian government is, in association with the other juntas in Niger, in Burkina Faso, and in Guinea. So this is the situation that we have. I think that ECOWAS should speak up, because what we have had, what we are now having, is an abbreviation of fundamental human rights for expression, for association, for assembly. Now, quickly, to go to the Middle East. Yeah, President Trump, as I was saying, is tripping the Gulf states. It's transactional, basically. Now, we first discussed Saudi Arabia, but let me focus first on Syria. Now, Syria was outlawed, more or less, by the United States, by UK, and also by Britain, particularly because of the activities of Shara, acting President Shara, who was originally a terrorist, a former terrorist, associated with Al-Qaeda, and who led the rebellion to remove the Assad family. Now, the effect of that was that sanctions were not placed on Syria. Now, this is now President Trump meeting with Assad, with Shara on the sidelines of a U.S.-Saudi Arabia investment summit. It's a very radical development. On the eve of that meeting, President Trump had lifted sanctions imposed on Syria, which led to celebrations across Syria. What is the effect of that, of those restrictions? Syria had been knocked out of the international financial system. Aid will not go to Syria. Most of the people are suffering. So this will represent some kind of hope for the people of Syria. And that's why they were celebrating from Damascus to other parts. However, the lifting of the sanctions, is not enough. What will follow? The United States is going to ask for the removal of foreign fighters. It's also going to give other conditions.
Yes.
But Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey are involved in the negotiations.
Yes.
Because while they met, and Trump ended up saying, okay, tough guy, strong past, Recep Erdogan was on the phone. Saudi Arabia's prince was in the... So a diplomatic triumph on all fronts. As for Qatar, the background is the Qatar Alago. Qatar Alago. That's what the Democrats in the United States are saying. They think that, this whole deal with Qatar, the first time an American president will go to Qatar, so Sheikh Al-Thani is legitimately excited.
Yes.
But the issue is that, yes, I've talked about gift diplomacy before on this program. There's nothing wrong with gift diplomacy. Qatar in 2018 even donated an aircraft to Turkey. Now President Trump says he's been able to get a deal of about $200 billion to buy aircraft from Boeing. He got $600 billion from Saudi Arabia in terms of investment. Now, but the big shadow on the Qatari meeting is about this Boeing aircraft. But and the opposition is united against President Trump in this regard. Democrats and even MAGA allies are all complaining that this looks like a bribe. This looks like an act of impropriety. But Bondi, the Attorney General, says all the legal issues will be looked into, and that this is between governments. So the devil, obviously, is in the details.
Well, thank you very much.
The Gulf States trip ends today.
It does.
After the visit to the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. Thank you very much, Vimbai. Let's move on to newspaper headlines across the world. Start with this day. This day does lead this morning with the Southeast Caucus of the PDP threatening to quit if Sunday Okoye is not returned as the party's national secretary. You've got the likes of Wabara saying that the region has been trampled on one too many times, while Udenwa says that they don't want to be taken for granted any longer. Also on the front page of the paper is this image of President of the Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, shaking hands with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in Qatar on Wednesday. I'd love to hear what they talked about. Well, moving on to the New Telegraph, it does lead with the biggest story out of Nigeria's education system, which is that there is now confirmation that 379,997 candidates will retake the 2025 UTME. That's as JAM admits errors in the results and offers a tearful apology. Now, it's also a story picked up as the lead on the Daily Sun, but another story on the paper's front page is that of finding out the Nigerian Daily Sun. My apologies. I know. It can be confusing. So on another story on the front page, in addition to this jam situation that we're seeing on the Nigerian Sun, is that 30% of Lagos civil servants who were sponsored abroad for training actually failed to return in 2 years. That's according to the Commissioner for Establishments and Training, that's Afolabi Ayontayo, who made this known during a press conference briefing on Wednesday, which was actually set to mark the second anniversary of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's second term in office. Well, But we can't stray too far away from the jam systems era, as it's also the lead story on The Guardian. But in much brighter news, the 2025 edition of AFRIMA, that's the All Africa Music Awards, will be hosted here in Lagos. That's as the African Union awards hosting rights to the Centre of Excellence. The Guardian also reports the federal government is upbeat about reforms amid criticism over this proposed London press conference. To the Vanguard, it does lead with a disturbing quote from a member of the House of Representatives from Zamfara State. Aminu Jaji has decried the terrifying insecurity in his constituency, narrating how bandits feed, or rather had fed, newborn twins to their dogs. That is a direct quote from the lawmaker. He painted a harrowing picture of how bandits had attacked, committed mass kidnappings, and essentially talks about their crass lawlessness in his constituency, which have left many communities there devastated and many residents displaced. This came as the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Dr. Richard Montgomery, expressed concern over the current insecurity in the country, blaming the situation on the spillover effects from the Sahel region, particularly Sudan and Niger. And very quickly to the United Kingdom, the Daily Telegraph says the NHS will allow children under 7 years of age to be seen by specialist gender clinics. Now, the headline refers to them as so-called trans toddlers. Now, children of all ages who believe they are transgender will be eligible for gender treatment on the NHS, including therapy and counselling. Now, previously, a minimum age limit of 7 years old was to be introduced. This was scrapped following a consultation. So now children under the age of 7, if they come forward and want to discuss their gender, have the ability to have this treatment on the National Health Service.
I know it's supposed to be fair and balanced, but trans toddlers is where I draw the line. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting to indoctrinate young children, toddlers, into this line of thinking, this radical ideology, gender ideology. That's a sidebar. Now, celebrating, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, and also Adebayo Ogunlesi was also one of the Nigerians, proud Nigerian ambassadors who lined up to shake the hand of Donald Trump in Qatar. For me, it was such a beautiful moment because it echoed some of our sentiments that we shared yesterday, which is that if you create ambassadors amongst private citizens, no government official has to go out anywhere and tell people that Nigeria is doing well. These people on their own become ambassadors in all the... Look at these two fine ambassadors we have.
Let's take a look at the pictures again.
Yeah, and this is an endorsement worth, quite literally, over $20 million or $20 billion. So, just beautiful to see this happening. Lastly, before I go, 30% of Lagos state civil servants who are sent on training to the UK do not return. Now, one of the proposals that was set forth, or recommendations rather, that was set forth by the World Bank in their National Development Update was that all these external trainings need to be cut. They need to cut this waste because it's not making sense in our budget. So, when you see people Japwa and so forth, it's an opportunity to go. You've got the flight, you've got the ticket, you've got all. It's wrong. But I'm just saying, let's just cut some of these external trainings anyway. Let's invite some of the global authorities and host them in some of our beautiful facilities here to train our people instead.
Okay, I'm more interested in that photograph about Alhaji Aliko Dangote being part of the Qatari team to receive President Trump, and also Adebayo Ogunlesi was there. Now, Alhaji Aliko Dangote is from Kano. Adebayo Ogunlesi is from Ogun State. Let's click. Let's not just the Remo people. Let's say it's Ogun State generally. Chairman of Global Infrastructure Partners, who has done so much in the area of equity holdings and are rated as one of the richest, ambassadors that we have on the global stage. This is what you say about Nigeria. The irony: the same country that produces all kinds of charlatans who are noted for, e-crime, fraud, deception, smart alekism, is the same country that has produced Aliko Dangote, who owns the single largest refinery, the single largest train of a refinery in the world, who is the richest man in Africa, worth over $20 billion, who is one of the largest employers of labor in Nigeria and in many other African countries, a global figure.
Yes.
Those are the kind of examples that we celebrate. And we also have the example of Adebayo Ogunlesi, who is doing very well. You will find them, these icons, these diamonds, these superstars in other areas, who have to show that, look, the problem is not with the Nigerian DNA. The problem is with certain characters who give us a very bad name. Now, Proverbs 22, let us go quickly to the book of Proverbs.
Okay.
Proverbs
This is perfect. Actually, go
verse
on.
29. It says that, seest thou a man who is diligent in his work? He shall stand before kings. He will not stand before mean men. That's what the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, tells us. And this is a perfect example. Both Ogunlesi and Dangote, they started from humble beginnings, but they were diligent in their area of enterprise. And that's why they can stand and, shake the hand of the President of the United States, the King of Qatar, the Sheikh of Qatar, and people like that. Yes. That should be a lesson to all the idle people who are wasting generous time, serious time on social media, that they can be different. They can work hard and be diligent in whatever they put their hands to, so that they too in the future can stand before kings like Aliko Dangote and Adebayo Ogunlesi and be a source of pride to us in this country.
Hallelujah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.